Good morning, viewers and listeners of Concerned Citizens Media. Thank you again for joining me. I have several updates to share with you. Today is November the 14th, 2022. I will start with ESAT Ethiopia reporting about Oromo Liberation Army controlling Dera district or Dera Warada in northern Shore zone. It says in Amara region, but Dera is an Oromo name, but it says in the northern Shore region. So the residents went to the SAT media station to call for help for survival, to call for regional and federal forces to defend them. So it's in Amharic. Just listen a little bit this one, then I will go to the next video. After that, I will read other news. Thank you again for coming back. Let's start.
ጣቢያ የመጣ ነው። ደራ ወረዳ በሸኔ ቁጥጥር ውስጥ ሆናለች ለጊዜው ማለት አብዛኛው ክፍል ከትናንት ማታ ጀምሮ ጥቃት እየደረሰበት ነበር። ነገር ግን ከዛሬ ጠዋት ከ12 ሰዓት ጀምሮ ጉንዶ መስቀል የሚባለውን ከተማ ለመቆጣጠር ጥረት አድርገው ያው አብዛኛውን የመንግስት ተቋማት ባንኮችን ጥቃት ለማድረስ ሞክረዋል። ባንኮችን ጥቃት ለማድረስ ሞክረዋል። እንዲሁም ባለሀብቶችንና መንግስት ሰራተኞችን የማገት ስራ ሰርተዋል። እንግዲህ ሸኔ ከዚህ በፊት ደራን በተደጋጋሚ ጥቃት ሲያደርግ እንደነበረ ብዙ ሰው መረጃው ይኖረዋል። አሁን ያለው ሁኔታ ማህበረሰቡ በራሱ ራሱን ለመከላከል ጥረት እያደረገ ነው። ነገር ግን ከፌደራል መንግስትም ሆነ ከክልሉ እስካሁን ይሄን ቀረጻ እስካደረግንበት ሰዓት ድረስ ምንም አይነት ገዛ እየተደረገ አይደለም።
ብዙ ሰዎች ታፍነው ተወስደዋል። ከመንግስት መስሪያ ቤት፣ ከግለሰብ፣ ከባለሀብቶች፣ ነጋዴዎች፣ ህፃናቶች ተወስደዋል። አሁን ተወስደዋል። እስከ 4 ሰዓት ድረስ ወደ 17 ሰዎች ወደ በቾ የሚባል ትምህርት ቤት ውስጥ ታፍነው እንደተወሰዱ ነው እዛ ቦታው ላይ ያለው መረጃ ማለት ነው። የሞተው ሰው ምክንያቱም ሰዎች መንቀሳቀስና ወጥተው ማለት ስላልቻሉ ያመለጠውም አምልጧል፣ የተያዘውም ተይዟል። የሞተው ሰው ይሄን ያህል ነው ለማለት በጣም አስቸጋሪ ነው።
ኦነግ ሸኔ በደራና አካባቢው ከባድ ጥቃት ሲያደርስ 1 አመት እንዳለፈው በማንሳት እስካሁኗ ሰዓት ድረስ በደራና አካባቢው ከፍተኛ እልቂት እንዳለና የሚመለከተው አካል ምንም አይነት እርምጃ ባለመውሰዱ ዜጎች ታፍነው መወሰዳቸውን ገልጸዋል።
ክልሉም ሆነ የፌደራል መንግስት በአፋጣኝ ኃይል ልኮ ህብረተሰቡን እንዲታደገው ኦሬዲ የወደሙ ተቋማትና የጠፉ ንብረቶች አሉ። የተጎዳም ሚኒሻዎችና የራሳችን ኃይል አሉ። ነገር ግን ከዚህ በኋላ ያለውን እንኳን ለማትረፍ አፋጣኝ የሆነ መፍትሄ እንዲሰጠን ብለን ነው እዚህ የመጣ ነው።
ከፍተኛ የሆነ ውጥረት ላይ ነው ያለው ቤተሰባችንና ህዝባችን። ለዛ ጉዳይ እንግዲህ አፋጣኝ መንግስት አፋጣኝ ኃይል አስገብቶ ጸጥታውን እንዲያረጋጋልንና ቤተሰቦቻችንን እንዲያድንልን፣ ህዝቦቻችንን እንዲያድንልን ለዛ ነው የመጣንበት። ህዝቡ ትናንትና ማታ ጀምሮ ከፍተኛ የሆነ ስቆቃ ላይና ከፍተኛ የሆነ እልቂት ላይ ነው ያለው። ንብረት እየወደመ ነው፣ የሰው ህይወት እየጠፋ ነው። በአስቸኳይ ያንን አሁን መንግስት የሚያስቆምበትን መንገድ እንዲፈጠር ብለን ነው ለመንግስት አቤቱታ ለማቅረብ የመጣ ነው ማለት ነው። አሁን ወረዳው ላይ ያለው ሁኔታ ወረዳው ህዝቡ መውጣት አልቻለም፣ ማምለጥ አልቻለም። አሁን ተቆጣጥሮታል ኦነግ ሸኔ ማለት ነው። እና ንብረት እያወደሙ ህይወት እያጠፉ ነው ያሉት። አሁን ደግሞ የከፋ እልቂትና የጅምላ ግድያ እንዳይፈጠር በአስቸኳይ ኃይል ተደራሽ እንዲያደርግልንና አፋጣኝ እርምጃ እንዲወሰድልን ስንል ነው ልንጠይቅ የመጣ ነው ወደዚህ ተሰብስበን ማለት ነው።
ከመንግስት ጎን በመሆን የሽብር ቡድኑን ለማስወገድ እንሰራለን ያሉት ኢሳት ቢሮ ድረስ መጥተው ጥሪ ያቀረቡት የአካባቢው ተወላጆች ነገር ግን የዜጎችን ደህንነት የመጠበቅ ኃላፊነት ያለበት መንግስት በመሆኑ ከባድ እልቂት ከመፈጠሩ በፊት ተጨማሪ ኃይል እንዲልክ ጠይቀዋል።
ለክልሉ መንግስትም ለፌደራል መንግስትም የማስተላለፈው ተጠያቂም ኃላፊነትም ስላለባቸው ተጠያቂም ስለሚሆኑ ኃላፊነታቸውም ግዴታቸውም ስለሆነ እኛም ደግሞ ወጣቶች አብረን ከመንግስት ከፌደራል ከክልሉ መንግስት አብረን የምንችለውን ያክል አቅማችን የፈቀደውን ያክል ለማድረግ ዝግጁ ነን። መንግስትም ደግሞ ይሄንን ማስተላለፍ የምፈልገው አፋጣኝ ዛሬ ነገ ሳይባል አፋጣኝ ህዝቡን ከዚህ አይነት እልቂት እንዲያድንልን ይሄ ወለጋ ላይ የሰማነው ነገር ዛሬ እንዳንሰማ እስካሁን የተፈጠረው ተፈጥሯል ዳግም እንዳይፈጠር የክልሉም ሆነ የፌደራል መንግስት በአስቸኳይ ዛሬ እንዲደርስልንና ህዝባችንና ቤተሰቦቻችንን እንዲያወጣልን እንጠይቃለን።
Okay. So
more power, more fun. Ethiopia to sustain the momentum.
okay, I'll come back to this Ethio-Tigray peace deal. So small, they just some of them just accusation and propaganda, but the other one is maybe a serious distress call for help from for immediate assistance from regional and federal force to save them. So Onekshane they call is the government propaganda. These are Oromo Liberation Army, and they are not. There is no Onekshane, but they use whatever the government tell them to use. So, but it's in a Dera district and controlling Gundo Maskal town. According to these residents, OLA is kidnapping rich people, government employees, children, women. It's just the distress call for help, that's normal, but the rest may be a propaganda against these freedom fighters. So they, according to these individuals, residents from Dera, 17 people already kidnapped by OLA forces, taken to Bacho school. So that's, the call for help from federal and the regional government for Dera residents. So OLA is not only controlling the Oromo district, but is, according to these residents, it's controlling the Dera district, which is in Amara region. So let's continue with the peace deal signed by high military commanders in Kenya.
Of the implementation of Ethiopia's permanent cessation of hostilities agreement between the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia and the Tigray People's Liberation Front, which was signed on the 2nd of November 2022. So the leaders were speaking during the culmination of a 5-day meeting of senior commanders from both sides, hosted right in Nairobi, Kenya, which sought to discuss the modalities of facilitating humanitarian access and the restoration of services in the Tigray region. The Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia and the Tigray People's Liberation Front signed a cessation of hostilities agreement in Pretoria, South Africa. The truce, brokered by a high-level panel of the African Union, was to be followed by a meeting of senior commanders from the previously warring sides to discuss and work out detailed modalities on the implementation of the agreement. A ceremony to sign the meeting's declaration on Saturday delayed for 9 hours as leaders thrashed out details. When it was time, The AU High Representative for the Horn of Africa and former President of Nigeria, Olusegun Obasanjo, and former President of Kenya, Uhuru Kenyatta, a pivotal member of the AU high-level panel, led the senior commanders in putting pen to paper on how they seek to steer a return to normalcy in Ethiopia.
It hasn't been easy, but I must commend the leaders on both sides for their good faith, for their consideration of the best for the good of all the people of Ethiopia, particularly the ordinary people of Ethiopia who have been deprived of peace.
We can live with each other within our diversity. Our diversity is our beauty. It should not be a source of division. It should be a source of pride as we share and enjoy diversity instead of our diversity becoming that which breaks us apart.
The 5-day meeting, which saw the senior commanders declare their commitment to ensure disarmament, facilitate immediate and hindered humanitarian access, and the restoration of services in the Tigray region.
We want to express our full commitment for bringing peace and stability to our people and country. Therefore, we will fully dedicate
Field Marshal
ourselves
Branu Jula
to implement the Pretoria Agreement and
representing
this declaration.
We
Ethiopia.
have suffered untold misery over
This
the
is
last 2 years and
General
still
Taddese
continue to suffer.
Worede representing the
The
Tigray region.
commitment we are making today is with the hope that expectations that our people's suffering will come to an end soon.
The former heads of state commending the commanders for putting the interest of their country first, saying it is proof that Africa can solve its own challenges.
Truly, we as the people of Africa have our own solutions. All we need to do is to engage, to respect, and to honor one another, to love our motherland, to love our continent, and to realize that in whatever capacities we hold, our responsibility is to make this continent better for our
I
children.
appreciate former
The
President of
signing
Kenya.
of this declaration affirms the silencing of guns in Ethiopia, marking the end of the war, but the start of a long but pivotal journey of restoration and reconciliation. Safin Acheng Oma, Citizen TV.
Okay, thank you, Kenya Citizen TV, for the updates. Okay, this advertisement is keep bothering me. Okay, I will come back to the U.S. election, midterm election. So it's good. They started in South Africa. They continued in Kenya, Nairobi. So they signed more detail on disarmament and humanitarian aid, which is good. But still, I didn't hear their call for Eritreans' immediate withdrawal from Ethiopia. Why they scared? That's a spoiler. Spoiler is there. So how can you bring peace when the Eritrea still refuse and still intensify their operation and also increasing the military power over there? So why they didn't call? That should be the first priority too. They should call for Eritrean soldiers withdrawal, immediate withdrawal from Ethiopia. This is from a couple of from Addis Standard. This for the first one. The same on the updates on the peace deal. The federal Tigray military commanders to form joint committee to elaborate DDR agreed to facilitate unhindered humanitarian access, movement of humanitarian aid workers. The top military leaders of the Federal Army and the Tigray forces, who have concluded a 5-day meeting in Nairobi, Kenya, have agreed to form a joint committee to elaborate on the modalities for the implementation of comprehensive disarmament, demobilization, and reintegration program. The parties also agreed to facilitate unhindered humanitarian access to all in need of assistance in Tigray in the neighboring region, to facilitate unhindered movement of humanitarian aid workers and provide security guarantees for humanitarian aid workers and organizations, as well as protection of civilians consistent with the provision of the agreement. The announcement was made after 5 days meeting, which started on 7 November between the top military commanders of the federal government of Ethiopia and the Tigray forces. The delegation from the two sides was led by Field Marshal Branu Jula, Chief of the Ethiopian Defense Force, and Lieutenant General Tadesse Worede, Chief of Tigrayan Forces. Speaking at the press announcement located at the Moran Center in Kenya, Nairobi, Field Marshal Branu Jula, Chief of Staff of the Ethiopian National Defense Force, said that the two sides have been engaged in a good spirit during the discussion in Nairobi and reached an agreement that both will fully dedicate ourselves to implement the Pretoria Agreement. Lieutenant General Tadesse, on his part, said the people of Tigray have suffered untold misery for the last 2 years and still continue to suffer. The commitment we are making today is with a hope and expectation that our people's suffering will come to an end and soon. He, however, said that this is a very daunting task in the light of the main spoilers from the region or outside who are profiteering from this war. It is our expectation that the other party honors this agreement not only to end this conflict but also to facilitate humanitarian access and the resumption of services. The speeches were followed by the two sides signing on the declaration of the executive plan of the Pretoria Peace Agreement, as it was referred to by Ambassador Ridwan Hussein, Security Advisor to Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. The issue of the withdrawal of foreign forces remained unaddressed openly, both in the speeches by the top commanders and the readout of the press statement that followed. Although Eritrean forces are fully engaged in the war since the beginning, the text of cessation of hostilities does not acknowledge Eritrea by name, but mention instead foreign forces. So why they go around and scare to call Eritreans by name and for their immediate withdrawal? Why? You know, that's I don't understand. So as from Addis Standard and the humanitarian aid situation, still a mixed message. Some they say aid is going there. Some they say no aid. And the government claiming the restoration of banking service in Western Tigray, but there is no proof because these people, they have no, they are lying too much. On prosperity side, they are lying too much. So there is credibility problem. So until we have eyewitness from Tigray region, we don't believe what they say. This is from U.S. State Department on this peace deal. Let me read what it says. Resumptions of humanitarian assistance to northern Ethiopia. Press statement. Need Price, Department spokesperson. We welcome the commitment to unhindered humanitarian access and the clarification of cessation of hostilities, implementing arrangement articulated in the declaration of the senior commanders meeting on the implementation of the Ethiopian permanent cessation of hostilities agreement announced in Nairobi. In addition to more concretely specifying the implementation of November 2nd agreement signed in Pretoria, the parties further committed to cooperate and facilitate the delivery of unhindered humanitarian access in today's agreement. We welcome the humanitarian access permissions that have already been restored, as well as the firm commitment for humanitarian assistance to flow to the Tigray region and the affected areas of the Afar and Amara regions to address the needs of the most vulnerable. The United States is the largest supporter of humanitarian aid to Ethiopia and will continue to deliver those most in need. As the parties implement the commitments they made in November 2nd agreement and today's declaration, they must honor the cessation of hostilities, expedite unhindered humanitarian assistance to all in need, protect all civilians, deliver restoration of basic services throughout northern Ethiopia, and begin investigation of and accountability for human rights abuses. This is very important. Thank you, the United States, for mentioning starting the investigation and accountability for human rights abuses. This is very important. Keep pushing for this. We need accountability. We don't need all these, decorating those criminals by flower at the airport. We want them accounted for who ordered, who did what in Tigray region and other. We commend the parties for continuing to deliver on their commitment and applaud the determined efforts of AU High Representative former Nigerian President Olusegun Obasanjo and former Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta, who spearheaded this effort in Nairobi, the government of Kenya for hosting, and the African Union for its leadership. The United States will continue to support the implementation of the November 2nd agreement and efforts to achieve a lasting peace. Work remains, but progress is promising and gives the Ethiopian people reason for hope. Yes, I agree. So a lot of promise, but work remains. Work remains, and aid delivery must start, and all basic service must restore, and Eritreans must be out of Tigray region. Then the disarmament will come slowly. That's a very serious one, very tough one to deal with because of all we know, all the animosity, all the abuses occur in Tigray region by Ethiopian National Defense Force, by Amara militia, by FANO. So disarmament, it might take time. And might face opposition because nobody trusts nobody. This is about airstrikes in Mendi, West Wallagga. So, Abiy killing students and other civilians. More airstrikes kill dozens in Mendi, West Wallagga, mounting civilian casualties draw outcry. Yet another airstrike on Wednesday, November 9, by the federal forces has killed dozens of civilians in the town of Mendi in Mana Sibu district of West Wallagga zone in Oromia regional state. The town of Mendi, which is approximately located 571 kilometers from the capital Addis Ababa, has been reportedly under the control of the Oromo Liberation Army OLA since last week. The area and its surroundings are experiencing severe communication blackout, but those who managed to speak to the media say the latest airstrike took place on Wednesday between 7 to 8 p.m. local time. The repeated drone strikes targeted a vehicle belonging to the Oromo Liberation Army, which the government refers to OLF Shane, that most of the deaths were civilians, according to eyewitnesses. There are around 20 people dead in total, one eyewitness said. The international spokesman of the Oromo Liberation Army, Oda Turbi, said on Wednesday that more than 30 civilians were killed and many were wounded in 4 drone strikes in Mendi town. They hit market area and bus stops, killing more than 30 civilians and injuring many more, he said, adding that the attacks didn't target military positions, but instead targeted civilian gatherings. The opposition, Oromo Liberation Front, OLF, said in a statement on November 10 that more than 100 civilians were killed and many wounded in 4 rounds of airstrikes in 2 places in Mendi town and near the Daletti area on Wednesday, the party said, quoting reliable sources. This comes days after a heavy fighting between fighters of the rebel group OLA and the government forces in Naqamt city of East Wallagga zone, which also resulted in the killing of civilians, including students. There has been increasing reports of government airstrike killing civilians in several locations in Oromia. The reports has led to widespread condemnation, including from Johar Mohammed of the opposition Oromo Federalist Congress, OFC, who has not been issuing such statement of condemnation at his private capacity after he was released from prison. Johar posted on his Facebook on Thursday saying that the indiscriminate use of air attack in Oromia has exacerbated civilian casualty. We cannot shoot and bomb our way out of Ethiopia's political crisis that is leading the country toward rapid disintegration, he added, while also criticizing the international community for not paying enough attention to the security crisis in Oromia and the Benishangul Gumuz regions. He has urged for a comprehensive peace in Ethiopia. Various social media users are also expressing their anger and protest by posting photos of people killed in recent attacks by government forces in Western Oromia and videos showing the damage caused by the attacks. The rebel group Oromo Liberation Army claims more than 300 civilians have been killed in several drone strikes in Oromia region in the past 2 weeks. A resident of Bila town told AP that he saw bodies of several people falling on the ground in the airstrike last week, November 2nd. BBC also reported that more than 60 people, including a grade 11 student, were killed in the same attack. It is recalled that Addis Standard reported that at least 68 civilians were killed in a drone strike in Ofu-Bakke village of Chobi district in West Shoa zone on October 23rd. In its statement, OLF called on the United Nations and the international and the national human rights organization to investigate these brutal killings of civilians, including women, children, and the elderly. Neither the Oromia regional state nor the federal government have commented on the recent escalation of fighting in Oromia and allegations of killings of civilians. The Ethiopian government signed a ceasefire agreement with TPLF forces last week to end the 2-year war in northern Ethiopia. The Oromo Federalist Congress, OFC, said the Ethiopian government should sign a similar ceasefire agreement with OLA if it wants to establish peace. Ofeko said, "We call on the Ethiopian government to cease the war and move toward a peaceful solution to the problems in Oromia and other regions of the country." OFC also calls on the political parties in the country, the people of Ethiopia, the international community, and other regions of the country to put pressure on the government. So, appreciated OFC for calling for a peaceful resolution and for calling on international community to end their silence on the genocide happening in Oromia by drones. The two victims of the Mendi airstrike are brother and sister, and according to the information I got from this Addis Standard reporting, one is high achiever, high scoring student, high school student, and a brother. This is very sad. Top scoring high school student Fenet Alamayo Tafasa and her brother Eyob Alamayo Tafasa are among the civilians killed by Abiy Ahmed drone strikes. It's painful from one family, losing two children, and high academic student. It's painful, but Abiy doesn't care because he is not the one suffering. His family is not suffering, whether in Oromia air drone attacks or whether it's in 2 years war happened in Tigray region. 500,000 people died because of his mishandling the Ethiopian politics. He came like as a nice person and turned into an evil. What they call a wolf in a sheep clothing. A wolf in a sheep clothing. He became like that. Evil man, a dictator who cannot tolerate even the journalist reporting. Okay, this one is between also Afar and Somali border. They also have, there is issue, and they are also fighting. Let me read what it says. This also from Addis Standard. More than a dozen civilians killed following latest clash between Afar, Somalia region's militias near border area. At least 18 civilians were killed. Several others were injured in a fresh clash in area bordering the Somalia-Afar regional states on 9 November, according to a source from the Somali region who spoke with Addis Standard. Some 28 civilians who were injured in the clashes were taken to a nearby Biki hospital in the Somali region. A medical staff at the hospital who wanted to remain anonymous confirmed to Addis Standard that the injured were admitted to the hospital. The latest clashes took place in the Hemdi Warada, one of the two new waradas set up by the Somalia regional state government to host people displaced during previous clashes. Dahunar is the other new warada, found in western city zone in the border with Afar regional state. Both were previously Kabales but were promoted to warada levels by the Somali regional state government in August this year. Thousands of internally displaced, previously displaced from these three disputed waradas were made to settle in the two new waradas as a compensation after the government failed to keep its promise to return them to the three waradas they were displaced from, according to our sources. Sporadic clashes frequently occur, especially over the past years between militias from the two regional states on disputed land. In August, the Somali regional state government said thousands of civilians were displaced following renewed clashes in the area bordering the Afar region. What triggered the latest clash is not clear, and Addis Standard's effort to get comments from both Afar and the Somali region officials on the latest clashes were unsuccessful. Both regions have also not issued official statement of the publishing of these news. All of them, you can see the pattern. All prosperity officials, they are holding the information. They don't want it because they don't want to get accounted for. You cannot get any information. Similar pattern, whether in Oromia, Amara, Afar, Somalia, they have the same ideology or some kind of guidelines, internal guidelines. They don't give any information. They will shut the phone on you if you request any information. This one is Iran diplomat summoned by UK over journalist threats claim. Iran's most senior diplomat in Britain has been summoned by Foreign Office after alleged threats were made against journalists living in the United Kingdom. At least two journalists working at UK-based opposition TV station Iran International have been warned by police of a threat to their lives. Foreign Secretary James Cleverly said intimidation of any kind toward the press will not be tolerated. Iran has dismissed the accusation as ridiculous. The regime has arrested and detained 40 journalists in Iran following ongoing protests across the country over the death of 22-year-old Mahsa Amini in September. Mr. Cleverly accused the regime of the suppression of freedom of expression and the targeting of media outlets operating in Iran. Iran chargé d'affaires Mahdi Hosseini Matin was summoned to the Foreign Office on Friday afternoon after Iran International, a Persian language news channel, said two of its team had been notified of threats towards them. I summoned the Iranian representative today to make clear that we do not tolerate threats to life and intimidation of any kind toward journalists or any individual living in the United Kingdom, said Mr. Cleverly. At least 2 journalists have been warned by the Metropolitan Police of a credible, significant, and imminent threat to their lives after a hostile Iranian reconnaissance unit was reportedly seen outside their homes and office. This is even outside of your country, in a foreign country. This is a very dangerous move by Iran. Iran International said the UK Metropolitan Police have now formally notified both journalists that these threats represent an immediate and significant risk to their lives and those of their families. It added that other staff members have also been informed directly by Metropolitan separate threats. Iran has dismissed the accusation as ridiculous, but a senior Iranian official has referred to Iran International as a terrorist organization, accusing it of stirring up protests in Iran and threatening national security, says BBC security correspondent Frank Gardner. This is about the tragedy in Turkey today. A bomb blast happened in Turkey. So let me read what it says. At least 6 people have been killed and 81 wounded in an explosion in a busy area of central Istanbul, Turkish authorities have said. The blast happened at about 16:20 local time, 13:20 GMT on Sunday on a shopping street in the Taksim Square area. A suspect has now been arrested, the Interior Minister said. Vice President Fuat Oktay earlier said the blast was thought to be a terrorist attack carried out by a woman. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said the perpetrators would be punished. Speaking at a news conference in Istanbul, he condemned what he called the Filet attack and said the smell of terror was in the air. Justice Minister Bekri Bozdag told Turkish media a woman had sat on a bench in the area for more than 40 minutes, leaving just a minute before the blast took place. On Monday morning, Interim Minister Süleyman Soylu said a person suspected of having left the bomb had been arrested by police and accused the Kurdistan Workers' Party (PKK) of responsibility. The PKK is a militant group which calls for an independent Kurdish state within Turkey. The EU and the United States regard it as a terrorist organization. No one has so far claimed responsibility for the blast. Government Minister Dera Yannick wrote in a tweet that a government ministry employee and his young daughter were among the victims. BBC correspondent Orla Guerin, who is in the area, said there was a heavy police presence around Istiklal Street, which had been cordoned off. Helicopters were circling overhead as ambulances went back and forth. Many shopkeepers standing in the doorways on the normally bustling street looked stunned, she said, adding that the incident will have come as a shock to many in the city. Hayat, who was in an internet cafe on Istiklal Street, when the blast took place, said there was turmoil following the explosion. I saw people running around and the wounded people were passing by the internet cafe towards hospital, she said. It was a frenzy. Another eyewitness, Semal Denizi, was about 50 meters or 54 yards from where the blast took place when it happened. There was black smoke. The noise was so strong, almost deafening, he told AFP. 20-year-old Eyüp told the BBC there is fear among residents of Istanbul following the attack, adding that more people may choose to stay away from crowded areas like Taksim. Okay, that's the last one. And let's come to US midterm election and another video and conclude today's presentation. Thank you again.
Democrats seize control of the Senate. Catherine Cortez Masto wins in Nevada, giving the Democratic Party 50 seats, and with the casting votes of the vice president, a majority in the chamber. Republican Adam Laxalt becomes yet another Trump-supported candidate to lose. Earlier, the Democratic Party won in the state of Arizona, where former astronaut Mark Kelly defeated Republican Blake Masters.
I'm not surprised by the turnout. I'm incredibly pleased by the turnout. And I think it's a reflection of the quality of our candidates, and they're all running on the same program. There wasn't anybody who wasn't running on what we did. They're all staying, sticky with it. And so I feel good, and I'm looking forward to the next couple of years.
And a clear loser in the midterm elections is former President Donald Trump, whose endorsement of so many losing candidates will call into question his outsized influence in the Republican Party.
That means we got a runoff.
Another of his choices, Herschel Walker, is likely to face an uphill battle in a runoff election in Georgia next month. The counting of votes is continuing in the House of Representative elections. Republicans still hold a slight lead, but the Democrats have closed the gap with some surprising wins in the past 24 hours. But even if Republicans do take control of the House, it will be by the slimmest of margins. And with control of the Senate, President Biden will still have a lot of leeway to press forward with his legislative agenda. Above all, these midterm elections have cemented his stature as a leader, which in turn will give him a greater degree of control over his party. Mike Hanna, Al Jazeera, Washington.
Introducing the all-new Ego Power Plus blower, reaching an incredible 765 CFM. It runs up to 90 minutes on a single charge. That's why Ego is the #1 rated brand in cordless outdoor power, exclusively at Lowe's, Ace, and Ego authorized dealers.
Well, this is absolutely incredible. We're on the outskirts of Kherson now. We're being given a military escort.
Okay, this is Ukraine. Kherson residents celebrating after Russia withdrew. You can see how freedom is very essential.
Waving the Ukrainian flag. We're literally
they are
on the
happy.
outskirts, very early in the morning. Добрый, как дела? Okay, hi.
You just take it for granted, until you come on some kind of situation you don't appreciate it.
So they're putting their thumbs up for Britain, obviously. Ukrainian soldiers have captured the city, forcing the Russians to have had Western allies. So she's talking about the airport, which is just down there, but this is the main road into the city itself. It's pretty early in the morning, but people are up. They're very grateful to see something that they didn't think they would see. for perhaps a long time, if ever at all. But Russia annexed this territory. As you can see, Ukrainian flag now flying, and it is under the control of Ukrainian soldiers.
There we go. As the last one, the last video I selected for you. So I'm happy. I'm happy for them. It was wrong on Putin, on part of Vladimir Putin, for just taking territories from Ukraine because he got a force or because he got some disagreement with President Zelensky of Ukraine. You can't do that. You can't do that, especially at this 21st century. So he got defeated. They are losing. They are losing tanks. They are losing soldiers. They are losing revenue from different sanctions. They are paying. Russians are paying heavy price for invading Ukraine, and they are losing the war too. So that's, and the other one is the midterm election. Thank you for coming out and for voting for Democrats. Now democracy is secured. Democracy is secured. If the former president candidates win, you know what's going to happen. The investigation of the president and all investigation will be thrown away. And you know what happened in the capital here. You want to see that kind of situation in the United States, in the first world? All this happened because of the president. President Trump encouraged his followers. He told them to go and burn the capital, destroy the capital, stop the voting count. Clear. But it takes time to have full picture what he did, what he ordered, and accounted for that. People died, and I don't want to repeat. You already know what happened because of his propaganda, his directives to these individuals. So now we are in a safe hand, at least for 2 years. 50 Democrats in the Senate and 49 Republican. And Georgia is still in a runoff. So we have to wait until December 6th to see who's going to win. But we are in a safe hand. Even if we lose that, we are still okay. So we hope we'll win that one. And the presidency after 2 years in 2024. That's all I'm going to say. And please be the voice for the Oromos suffering under Abiy Ahmed. Drone and air strikes. Don't be silent. Don't be silent. They don't have a media to go to and to call for help, like those people in Dera town, Dera district. They came to Isat TV station. Oromos, they don't have nothing. Nothing at all. They cannot go to the OBN or Isat or ABC or Fana television or Walter television. They don't have any media to go to and ask for help. They don't have. They are under siege since Abiy Ahmed came to power, especially in the last 4 years. That's all I'm gonna say, and thank you for joining me. And I always appreciate you sharing your comments on my video. And I will be back with other news and update. Thank you again, and be safe.